All right, what's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another Muffins and Morgan. We're later today because you've seen it. I launched my company, and I launched my company announcement video. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it. If you watch it, if you haven't, go look at my profile. It's on there. And we're gonna make this a quick 30-minute session. We're not doing anything crazy, but y'all know, man, you gotta stay consistent, is what the people say, right? You can't just be like, oh, I guess I'm not gonna do this today. We're remaining consistent. And if you're tuning in for the first time, I always ask people, where are you tuning in from? And if you haven't been here before, well, welcome. And y'all know how we start every single show. I mean, it doesn't really change. You know what we're about to play here. All right, we're back again. So again, we'll be here for 30 minutes answering questions. But let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what's going on. Welcome everybody to the show and what is going on. What is happening, everybody out there? So yeah, just dropped the announcement. That video was a very fun video to make if you watch the entire thing. But let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know where you're at. We'll answer the questions that people have, and we'll dive right into it. And so, one of the things that I told people is that when you think of something, I continuously just vet it with other people, talk to other people about it. Found there was a lot of good conversations, dialogue I had with people, and just was able to really pull it out there. So it was really good. But everyone who's tuning in, let us know where you're coming in from and what is going on. We'll love to dive into any questions that people have as we talk about this. And Kenton, shout out to Canton, Georgia. That's like in Tennessee though. That's like pretty far away. that's a ways away, man. No, I'm kidding. Canton's not too bad. I think the last time I was out there it's probably a couple of years ago. I think. Oh, there. So cool. Everybody tuning in. Let us know what's going on, what's happening. Throw in some questions in the chat. Would love to answer some things while we're here. I'm just hanging out for a quick chill session, 30 minutes. Nothing really crazy here, but I know people might have some questions again to dive into it. Jaden, what's going on? First time for Texas. Hopefully they're doing extremely well and life is going well, right? Hopefully things are vibing and good with you. Everybody else is tuning in. Let us know what's going on and let us know what's happening. So if you're going into the weekend here, one thing that I'd recommend, I've talked about this a lot, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, check into it. It's really good. A lot of great information you can get out of Sales Navigator, a lot of the good things you can facilitate and move forward in terms of that. So those are just things that you can continuously use across the board and seeing how it's helpful. So if you're not in Sales Nav, highly recommend you dive into Sales Nav. If you're not, just another good way to get out there and put yourself on the map if you're not using it. Cool. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you're tuning in, let us know if you have any questions. Again, this is just a quick Q&A session, nothing crazy. Want to remain consistent across the board. So if anyone wants to drop in and you have some questions, drop it in the chat. I will say though, another thing to keep in mind. I was talking to someone about this the other day. I know people think it's dead, but I don't think it's dead. I think it's just something to be mindful of. Is cold calling, right? Cold calling is something to continuously be mindful of when you think of cold calling across the board. I would continuously focus on that. Like people are continuously making calls, getting the most out of it, right? Just finding ways to do that is incredibly important. A lot of people are sleeping still on the phone, even though obviously it's harder, still applicable to get out there. But this is a good question we have coming in. All right, cool. So we'll pull this up. Any preferred sequencing tools other than Outreach that you recommend? I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them out there, right? You got like Groove and all things of that nature. You got Sales Off, but the thing is, like, what I would recommend, Jeffrey, is finding a good balance of multi-touch prospecting. So I'll give you like an example. So if you have like cold calling, you have emailing that you're doing, and you have LinkedIn, I think one of the interesting things about that, when you think about that whole entire mix, is making sure you have the right steps. So, Jeffrey, I don't know if you have like a steps that you follow now. I'll give you like an example of what you can do. So, I always think about having like 8 to 12 steps within like 20 to 30 days. So, when you're doing about like 8 to 12 steps in like 20 to 30 days, your focus is how can I have the multi touch effect? So, you might do a call and then an email and then like a social touch, right? All within what you're doing, right? So those all you can do, and those can lead to success. I think also as well is when you're thinking about those steps, I always recommend when you're doing like sequencings or things of that nature to do a email first to like warm it up. Then like day two, you would do like a call, and then like the follow up of that, you would do an email. So one thing I found to be like really helpful is if you do like a call, you'll leave like you leave like a voicemail, and then you follow up with that voicemail, and then the next thing that you do is say, hey, here's an example, like here's an email I'm going to send you, so check it out and reply accordingly if you can. So I've actually found that when you do an email to warm it up, and like say day one, day two you'll do like some type of call, and then like the same day you send an email, and it's a good follow up as well. So that's just like another way to get responses, engagement. So Jeffrey, hopefully that's helpful. I gave you a couple tools, but when you're thinking about the campaigns, you want to think about having, say, 12 to, yeah, I would say 8 to 12 touches, but then you're looking at like 20 to 30 business days to execute that motion. So that's like an example. So again, it's all about focusing on how many touch points do I have? You want to do emails, you want to do calls, you want to do social, you want to do the whole thing. And then the next thing that you want to do is say, okay, now that I've done that, what is my next step? Well, hey, look, your next step would then be, let's go out and do maybe some social touches and things of that nature. Let me go test it for like a month, things of that nature. That's a way that you can go about it. So I've seen that to be really helpful for a lot of people, and can be a way to get some meetings there. So that's there as well. So good. I hope God, that was helpful. Anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to chime in. And another thing that I would also recommend as well, Jeffrey, if you're, I don't know, I'm assuming you're using Outreach or whatever tool you're using. Since we're on this topic, one of the things that you can also dive into is looking at the different templates or whatever they're called within your tool, and creating different industry and persona based templates. So you might have like a persona based template, right? And this persona based template is based on CTOs, and then you have VPs of engineering, then you have admin. So I've actually found that's a great way to then scale, right, to then get the most out of what you're doing. So then you're able to capitalize on those moments. So that's just something you can do as well. So again, hopefully that was helpful. And then Jaden, this is a good question. Best practices for researching companies. The best practices for researching companies is going to depend on what kind of companies you go after. So Jaden, if you want to give me like an example of like, hey, I go after public companies, I go after smaller companies, I definitely could give you a ton of different advice, and I could give you a lot of different perspectives. So if you let me know what you're what kind of companies you're going after, I can then come in and say, hey, here's some things you can take into consideration as across the board. But again, that's just something that I can dive into. But what I will say is like the simple best practices is when you're looking at researching companies, for example, right? You're like, okay, all right, cool. Healthcare companies, SMB, mid market. So some this may be your scenario, but some companies you may not find any information, right? Like, and that's going to be the scenario, and then that's fine. Then you basically focus on persona based outreach or persona based information, and then you can't, because sometimes you won't be able to do that, right? So that's like one way that you need to think about it. But typically, when I tell people to go research, there's 3 different things you want to go to. So y'all can write this down, and you can even find this. You can find this on any site. So one is it's typically called like the press release, or maybe the press room sometimes is what it's called. It's called different things, but like typically it's called like the press room. And that's where you can find the blogs, the information, and also just recent things that they've published out. So you can use that as context. So what are things that they post? This is like company announcements that are like, hey, we just got a new executive. or product updates. That's one that's also applicable as well. These are things that are like incredibly helpful across the board. So there's that. And before I go into two, shout out to Siobhan. I believe that's how you say your name. I'm gonna give you the. You're gonna get the air horns today because you're coming in from Jamaica. I don't think we've had anyone on the show ever come from Jamaica. So shout out to you. So the thing is, best practices for research companies. That's number one. Number two is there's tons of tools out there. For example, like a Owler, right? They have a ton of information on these companies that allow you to distill it in one way using a ton of AI in the background. That's another good way to do research on companies. And speaking of AI, this is something I haven't mentioned before because it's new, is ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT, literally you can put in there like, hey, give me 10 facts about like Coca-Cola, or like, can you look at Coca-Cola's site and give me some information? That personally like is one of my favorite ways to use AI, because then it can just come up with something, can send it out, right? And it makes a whole lot of sense, right? And so that to me, right, is one of the best things that you can absolutely do. And it's going to put you, right? The goal is putting you in the best spot, because once you're able to start being like, okay, cool, like I can get the right information, I'm using AI, etc. That's what you want to do. But I would say the best way to go about researching companies is on the website. There's press releases, there's blogs, there's tons of information there. I'm trying to think of what else is on there. They have a ton of information. They have information on. Bro, I saw something crazy the other day. Oh yeah, they have information on like different ways on their mission statements that they're going about to accomplish goals. Right? There's just so much that you can do. So those are ways you can do. So Jada, let me know if that was helpful. I can dive into some more examples as well. But that's the best practices. Like looking at their mission statement, looking at who they're hiring. That's a really good one. I actually will mention that one. Who they're hiring is really big because you can see who they're looking to put more resources in. It also tells you when they're hiring someone, what they're hiring them for, so you can see their responsibilities and what they're looking to do. So there's just so many different examples, and those are just a couple that you can start diving into. So there's that take as well. All right. Any tips on email deliverability? I've been doing things like removing links, images from emails, and using apps like Bouncer. We'd love to know if you had more tips. So essentially here, one of the best things that you can do, and there's I forgot, there's a Jesse Allett. Yeah, he's really big into this. So I'd follow him, JESSEOULETTE. He's really good people out there, and he really focuses on email deliverability. So you can go talk to him a little bit more about this. But what I would tell you is that the best way to go about this is like removing links inside of the actual email, even if they're in the signature, then they're not relevant, removing those as well. Looking out for certain words that could be flagged. And like an example of that would be like words that are like cheap or like discount. Like those are just, I'm giving different examples. Those are like flagged in the domain. So those are just a couple things that you can do. What I've seen some people do as well is, I mean, depending on what company you're at, you can create a different domain name just for doing selling and just for doing prospecting. That's a whole other thing that you can do as well. So I'm just giving you different examples of how you can go about this, but that's a way that you can do it. So I'm not too well versed into that, but those are just things that I've heard, but I would follow maybe some other people who can dive more into this. So hope you all enjoying the show so far. Again, I'm doing this at a completely different time than when I normally do it. So again, I've been focusing on launching the company here and launching the video. So if you didn't see that yet, go check it out, and things across the board. So all that is going on. All right. So do you deliver the multi-persona sequences at the same time? So what I do is I don't launch them at the same time. I have templates written out. So all these templates are based on a persona. So let's say I have like a VP of marketing, a CMO, and a head of demand generation. Let's just say that's the case. So I have these three people. And so what I'm doing with these three people next is then, which is like the most important part, is I'm taking those three people, and then I'll put them through like a sequence. So maybe it's my mid-market sequence. We're just making this up. So then every time I message the person, I then would add a template to then be like, okay, I'm messaging the CMO, I'm messaging the VP of marketing. So my whole thing, Jeffrey, is I don't like having 5 million different sequences. I like just having maybe 3 to 5 sequences, right? And each organization is different. They might disagree with my philosophy, which is completely fine, but the whole goal right now is if I focus on 3 to 5 different pieces, right? Then the goal is that I can then add templates inside of those sequences to ultimately over time get better. Is the whole thing. So that's what I would at least recommend for you is saying, okay, I could 3 to 5 sequences. I pick templates for each personas, and then based on those personas, it allows me to then go do what I need to go do. So that's the example there. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, the thing is, I've seen a lot of in training a lot of companies. Like what I realized is that people would have like 100 sequences, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you get lost. But if you have 3 to 5 sequences, and then you have templates in those sequences or those campaigns, way better job, right? It's going to be better for you. So that's what I'd recommend there. My favorite book right now. That's a good question. Um, my favorite book like that I'm recently reading. Okay, so I have a book list looking at right now. So I'll give this example. I like this book a lot. So let's see. It's got like smudges on it real quick, but it's called The Art of Showing Up. Well, y'all can see that. The Art of Showing Up. So it's by Rachel. What's the last name? Rachel Miller. And the art of showing up just talks about like how to show up for yourself. What can you do? How can you make it applicable for you? Like all those different things, right? It's just a really good understanding of how can you just be better ultimately as a human and communicate with people on what is good and what is what is good and like what is not essentially. So the thing is that like that's what I would ultimately look at here is the art of showing up is one of my favorite books because it allows you to have really good conversations with people and articulate things in a way to them that would make ultimately sense for them, right? So and shows you, hey, this is what I'm about, this is who I am, all the grand things across the board. So again, what I would say here is when you're looking at the art of showing up, great book. That's my favorite one. And then I recently read, well, actually, no, I'm reading it right now. And then I'm going to California next week. So I'm going to finish it on the flight, which is Alex Hormozzi's, no, oh, not 100 million offer. So the 100 million offer essentially is like focus on how do you make really good offers so that like basically it's just like it just makes sense. So that's what I've been reading a lot as I've been like starting my own business is that like how can you name certain things that it makes sense to people and then it's not overwhelming and you learn a lot of things along the way, but it has been fundamentally my favorite book so far. I'm like halfway in and I'm going to finish it on the flight cuz I'm going to California. So that's like a 4 or 5 hour flight. So I should be able to finish it like on the way there. And that's the goal. So yeah, I would check out Alex Hormozzi's $100 million offers, irresistible offers is what it's called. And then the one I just showed, the art of showing up. It really allows you to have great conversations with your friends, your coworkers, significant other, whatever you're doing. It just has allowed me just to be like more concise and clear with people on like what's going on. So that's the case as well. And the kids on the soundboard, they have fun with it, so they like it. So we're a fan. All right, let's keep the questions rolling. If you're just tuning in, this is Muffins. We're going to do the Q&A. Again, if you are like, wait, what? Normally this is earlier in the day. It typically is earlier in the day, but obviously due to a couple things that are going on today, I'm doing it later. But again, my whole goal is just to remaining consistent. That's the main thing. So did it later in the day, so different type of vibe. But ultimately, right? Ultimately, the goal is to answer all these bits and pieces that we can, and then answer questions that people have. So hopefully, Jaden, that's helpful on some favorite books. I used to be a massive reader. I don't read as much anymore. And that's not because I don't like reading. It's just because I realized at the end of the day that I learn better actually watching videos. So I spend an obnoxious amount of time on YouTube learning and absorbing information as much as I can, right? And so that's the big thing there. So Anthony, what is Wild Hearts? Bro, I have zero clue what that is. I just finished Hogwarts Legacy. I'll tell you that. I was beating down some Hufflepuffs, bro. I was just like I was murking some Hufflepuffs. I'll tell you that. But then the game, I finished the game too quickly, so like I wasn't really like, pun intended. I wasn't really amped about it. I was like, this game, I beat it too fast. I had it on the hardest difficulty, and I was breezing through people. I was like, this game's too easy. But also, I play a lot of video games, so I think a lot of them have become really easy for me. So I typically need something that's like I can play at a high difficulty so I can just do it. But no, I haven't played Anthony. Sell me on Wild Hearts. Why should I play this game? I don't even know what it is. So you got to sell me. Um, yeah, Jeffrey, I definitely could talk about it. So if you have not seen the announcement, I started a company called Ascension Media Productions. It stands for AMP. Now, the thing is that there's a lot more that I'm going to talk about in the next couple weeks on how this all came together. So the reason I came up with the company and the reason I'm not just saying like, hey, I'm Morgan, I'm going to do some sales training or I'm going to go be an influencer and things of that nature. And those are things that I thought of. But ultimately, what I realized is I had to ask myself a different question. So I don't know if any of y'all are considering starting your own thing, or maybe you're in a job right now and you're wondering, okay, how can I be better? How can I think about things in a different perspective? So we were in Arizona. So a lot of content that we shot was in Arizona. And I remember having a conversation with one of the people like in the hotel, and I had been talking to like mentors and stuff. But I don't know, someone just asked a really good question. I was like, what the heck is a good question? They were like, what if you were to do something, what would you want to do for the next 10 years? You couldn't switch. What would you do for the next 10 years? So that's a pretty deep question. What would you do for the next 10 years? Right? You're like, I don't know. What would I do? Right? It's a very, very fantastic question. So when you think about what am I going to do for the next 10 years, you have to take a step back, really think about it, and be like, what decision am I going to make? Because you could pick something that you're like a little excited about and do it for like 2-3 years. You could pick something that like, okay, maybe I'm passionate, but I'm not like overwhelmingly passionate. So that's like 5. But what's something that like I'm just committing to the craft like 10 years? This is just what I do. This is just it. So the more and more I thought about that, the more I was like, yeah, content is something that I absolutely love to do. I did content before I even came on LinkedIn. So I did it starting in 2016. Most of y'all may not know that. I've been doing it for like a long time, 7 years on this platform. And I was doing it 3 to 4 years before the platform. So I'm doing it for like a decade. And there's obviously a ton of things I need to learn. There's a lot of people who probably know more than me. But the thing is, like, I've just been in it so long. I was like, I want to learn how to do this at the highest level. And I also want to use the things that I've learned and then use it in a B2B sense, and where I think there's some areas where people can continuously be better. So that's when I took a step back and realized, you know what, like this whole thing about amplify and amplification, I wanted to amplify the way that I was doing my own content. So it was for me, for personal, but also I wanted to amplify the way I talk to my audience, because there's things that like I don't inherently believe in as much as I used to when I first started out as an SDR. Obviously, in 7 years, things can change. And then also I wanted to do more productions and be more of a director. So I wanted to do more shows like Muffins with Morgan, but I'm gonna do more, which will be announcements on that in the next couple months. I wanted to do more things around helping B2B organizations think about things in an innovative and creative way. And also as well, I just wanted to just amplify people in the way that I've seen it work, and also for myself. So Jeffrey, hopefully that gives you context. If you've got more questions, you can hop in. But essentially I knew that Ascension Media's Productions, it just came at the right time. The name made sense. And then the acronym was AMP. And then I was like, amplify, amplification. It just started rolling. I was like, this just makes a sense. So we got to do it. So then just the logo came, everything came together. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And then I had to ask myself, do I want to commit 10 years of this? And I was like, yes. And then that was the answer. But that's a hard thing to ask yourself, that question. Like, do I want to do something for the next 10 years? Like, because at some point, you probably 3 years in, you don't want to do it. But I see the long-term vision. I wrote it all out, and I was like, this is something that I want to do. It just makes sense, right? So once I realized that, I was like, I'm committed. Now, I'll be super transparent with y'all. It's a very difficult thing to do, because I've been talking about sales development and prospecting for years. So to completely go away from that, right? That's a hard decision to make. So I don't know if anyone's had to make that decision before, where it's like your original content and context that you built, you were completely getting away from and going into something different, right? So what I'm talking about is completely different than what I have been talking about for years. So your audience has to adjust. You get new people, you lose people along the way. And that has happened. That is a hard journey to have. I'm just being super real with y'all. But what I realized is that that is okay because I feel more and more at peace and I feel comfortable. And personally, I'm having more fun on my content than I've had in years. And that shows in the content and people can receive that. So again, these are just hard decisions that some people creating content, they're gonna have to make at some point. I've been doing it for a while. So at some point I was gonna I was gonna have to make the decision. I was talking to my guy Drew at Lasso. We were talking about this. He lives in Atlanta, and I was telling him, I was like, every creator has a 3-year threshold. So essentially, at 3 years, it doesn't matter who you are, you hit a point where you're like, do I want to continuously talk about what I'm doing and double down, or do I have to pivot, or do I just coast? Every single creator at 3 years, I don't care who you are, you're gonna hit this point. You're gonna be like, all right, like, do I continuously talk what I'm talking about and I just ride it out? Do I talk what I'm talking about, but I just get deeper, or I'm gonna completely go in a different direction and expand or constrict? That's where everyone goes, and that's where most people falter, right? It's a hard thing to be like, okay, what do I do next, right? Hard, but that's just the reality. So again, Jeffrey, hopefully that helps answer that question there, and it's helpful. And what's going on, man? We're gonna get you in this Muffins Morgan soon. This is just a quick one. This is nothing crazy, but we're gonna get you in one, and it's gonna be nuts. It's gonna be nuts. So I hope you're prepared for it. I don't know if you're prepared, but it's gonna be a good one. All right, y'all. So lasting questions, because I do have to hop on a call. This is like a quick what up, what's happening. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the video. If you didn't see it, you should go see it. It was a good time. But all right, cool. This is the quick question. Where should I look to find a mentor for either business or life? How did you get invested in your growth for a long period of time? It's a good question. I think about all the mentors that I've had. The thing that stood out to me the most is they always said that they saw something in me that was like that reminded me of them when they were younger. So I think my advice actually changed on this. I used to say, hey, reach out and say, hey, can I pick your, like, I used to say that. I think that's a terrible strategy. The best strategy overall, because most people don't do this, by the way, the person that you want to probably mentor you, like, is probably like posting a lot of content, a ton, and it's free. So I always tell people, go listen to what someone's saying, take the information and say, hey, I listened to your podcast for an hour and you talked about how to close a deal. I'm just making some stuff up. And you had this amazing discovery question that just shattered my brain. I was not prepared. Right? So from there, right, you tell them how it helped you close more deals, you got more opportunities, you're a better overall salesperson. Now they're going to be like, this is really interesting. I want to hear more about what this person's about, because they took the due diligence to take the advice, to not only take the advice, but they applied it and they got results. So that means that, like, they want to invest into you because they're going to be like, I see myself in you. And that's how you get those mentors. And that's how you get those people to help you in your business and in your life. And I'm glad that you separated business and life, because I believe that mentors are helpful in certain stages of the arenas. Personally, there's mentors I've had in the past where I would not ask them about personal things at all. Like, I just wouldn't. Like, they would not be helpful. But there are some people, personal life, that I would not ask them for business things because they also wouldn't be helpful. So know which mentors are good for certain things and when to go for them for certain aspects, because some of them are just not going to help you in a certain aspects in your life. And that's just the reality of the situation. So that's an amazing question, Jaden. Hopefully that was helpful for you to go find that mentor. I would write down 5 to 10 people that you want to meet. I literally just did this exercise. I'm looking at my phone. We did, me and my best friend, we did it the other day. And I'll just tell you exactly what we did in the notes here. So we literally called it Power List 2023. So I'm gonna leave you this, Jaden, and everybody listening. If you want to mentor this year, like, this is the lane. So every single person on this list, like, I checked, has north of 7 or like 8-figure business. Like 80% of them are like, or have an 8-figure business. Even some of them have 9 figures, right? So I'm like, all right, that's where I'm trying to go. So I gotta go like talk to these people, right? So I wrote down 10 people, and then I wrote down what posts they've done recently. And then I said, how can I take action on that? So for example, someone was talking about, I'm trying to find an example here. Oh yeah. Someone was talking about their morning routine, right? And I was like, okay, cool. He posted this on February 15th. And then I'm going to talk about my morning routine, and I'm going to tag him in my Instagram and say, hey, I was inspired by your posts. It made me think about my morning routine differently, and I tag him. Now he's going to be like, okay, he listens, he applied it, he got results. That's an interesting person. I should probably follow him. And the thing is, the bar is extremely low because most people are lazy. They don't know what they're doing. Well, they don't. That's wrong. They don't know that's wrong. They don't know what they're doing. They're just not willing to do it. And you have to find out ways that you can stand out. So that's it, y'all. I'm out. I'm out. This is a quick 30 minutes. I'm in and I'm out. I have another call to hop on, so I got to go do that. But the thing is, appreciate y'all hopping on for these 30 minutes. We will continuously these on Friday. Next Friday, actually we have a surprise. It'll be a fun one. Y'all aren't ready for next week as we launch into some new content. But appreciate y'all for hopping in for those who did, and on the replay. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Cheers.